Hello again, my name is Martyn Heyne, and in these past few videos I've been talking quite a bit about harmonics. That was in the context of saturation or aliasing and other such very technical subjects. And it's got me thinking that really harmonics are first and foremost a musical subject, and a very important one at that. So I figured today I was going to look at them a little bit more from that perspective. Now, as I've mentioned in those other videos, harmonics are integer multiples of a fundamental frequency. What does that mean? If an integer is a whole number, so not a fraction or anything like that. So if the frequency in the simplest terms is 100, then the multiples would be 200, 300, 400, 500, and so forth. And the reason this comes about is that if you think of something that makes a sound, such as the air column in a wind instrument or a vibrating string, the string is attached up here and down there, and between those 2 points where it's attached, it can vibrate, and this gives you a certain tone, a pure tone, a sine wave, the fundamental. But it also vibrates as 2 halves of that length. That would be an overtone. Overtones, by the way, are also called upper partials or harmonics. Yeah, in English I think harmonics is the most common, but in German we tend to say overtone, which is overtone. It can also vibrate as 2 halves, it can vibrate as 3/3, it can vibrate as 4/4, and so forth. And all these tones are naturally already present in the sound of many instruments and many things that make sounds. So they kind of occur naturally. Let's look at that. If I play the small C here, by the way, this is middle C, and the octave underneath that is the small octave. So this is small C. It's about 130 Hertz. Not exactly, I'm rounding a little bit because my mental arithmetic is going to let me down otherwise. So the first fundamental of it would be, the first harmonic of it. Actually, I should stop here. There is an odd thing going on with harmonics, which is that you've got the fundamental and then you've got an harmonic, but it's not called the first harmonic, it's called the second harmonic. But nobody ever calls the fundamental the first harmonic. You just call, that the second harmonic, and then the third, and so forth. And this is kind of important because people also speak of odd and even harmonics, and you have to know which are which. And I think the most helpful way of thinking of it is to think of the multiples. So you have the fundamental, and twice the fundamental is even, is 2, is the second harmonic. But again, there is no first harmonic in that sense. So C at 130. If we add another 130 to it, so it's times 2, we get this at 260. Now, all the musicians know that if you double a frequency, you get an octave, and that's what you're getting here. Indeed, you go from a C to a C. You add another 130, you get to 390. So now there's some sort of an odd inflation going on, and your 130 Hertz don't buy you an octave anymore. Instead, now all you're getting is a major fifth. And if you add another 130 Hertz, you get to 520, and now you're just getting a perfect fourth. So, and another 130 will get you here. Let me just play the whole series for a second. So as you see, it starts off pretty wide and then it gets narrower and narrower, and the 130 Hertz have less and less of an impact, so to speak. And in terms of intervals, first you get an octave, perfect fifth, perfect fourth, major third, another minor third, major second, few more major seconds. This note is quite far away from what the well-tempered piano is giving us. and then eventually minor seconds. So, actually the harmonic series continues from there. It just gets narrower and narrower. So let's try to hear some of these notes inside the first tone I'm playing. So the first one this is the second harmonic. Let's hear it in the sound. If I'm just playing the fundamental note, can you hear this pitch as well in it? Quite strongly, I think. Okay, and then the third is this one. This is a new pitch now. So the first new pitch that we're getting is G. This is very strong in the fundamental. Let's try to hear this pitch in the C. Can you hear it? I hope the microphone is picking this up. It's so loud here that I can't believe it's not. Let's see. So in fact, this is really one of the most dominant and obvious sounds that you can hear in the C. And this is of course not a coincidence, because later on we're going to do stuff like, aren't we? Which everybody knows as the 5 chord and the 1 chord, or the dominant and the tonic. And indeed the dominant is called the dominant because that's the dominant sound that you hear in the note of the whatever you consider the tonal center, in this case C. The dominance of the fifth as a harmonic is also relevant in arranging. For example, if you have 4 voices and you're doing a C chord and you want to have a 9 and a 7 and you go like this, then the easiest note that you can afford to get rid of is always the fifth, because the fifth is already there, and you can add other notes and you don't really lose anything. Okay, moving on. The next overtone that we're getting is C again. And here an important pattern is emerging in a way. So we've got the fundamental, then the second, the third, and the fourth overtone. And of course, the overtones that are even. The overtones that are even are always dividable by 2. So 2, the second overtone will be the octave of 1, because 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 4 divided by 2 is 2, and so the fourth will be, 4, 8, 16 will all be the octaves of the fundamental, and the other even ones, for example 6 divided by 2 will then be the octave of 3, and so forth. 12 will be the octave of 6, and so they kind of repeat up. But the uneven ones, they introduce different sounds, and this is where we're getting to now. So we've got second, third, fourth, and the fifth harmonic is giving us this very exciting new sound. This is of course the major third within C, so an E, and together now these overtones are creating the major triad, which is of course the most fundamental building block of tonal music. And again, not coincidentally, like much of music, it is not so much an invention as it is a discovery of something that did already exist. The C major triad is in the C. Let's try to hear it. Let's try to hear the E inside just the fundamental note. here we're actually getting to the funny aspects of the well-tempered tuning as well, which is that the thirds are a bit sharp. So if you hear the natural E that you hear as a harmonic, then this one is not really the same. Bit sharp. Okay, moving on. G again, and then we get this. Also kind of an important note that is an obvious use for dominant chords, and then another C, and then the F sharp is interesting because really it's kind of between F and F sharp, but it is part of the reason why chords with an F sharp don't sound so terrible as you'd maybe think they would. And then, yeah, again, it gets kind of narrower and perhaps less relevant. But another thing that is interesting is that even, this seems to be the word that I'm unable to think of today, but that the even harmonics have a very different sound than the other ones. So if I have my fundamental and I think of the even harmonics, it's kind of like this sound. It's kind of like a sweeter, fuller sound when you add even harmonics. Whereas when you add uneven harmonics, it's more this kind of sound that you're getting. And of course, as I mentioned in one of the videos, the square wave is basically just a fundamental with a collection of uneven sounds. And you can kind of tell that it's kind of a whole different set of tension that comes in with them. And another really important aspect of overtones is that they have an essential impact on the timbre of an instrument, on the tonal quality. So if you play the same pitch on a piano or on a guitar or on a clarinet or on a trumpet, all these instruments will sound very differently, and that is largely because the overtones will have different loudnesses. So it's not the case that the levels of the overtones are always the same naturally, but some can be louder than others, and then instruments will naturally sound differently as a result. Okay, I think that about covers it. And again, I think it's important to bear in mind that these things are observations of the natural world that is already around us, much more so than inventions. And sometimes, perhaps, when we think of the work of somebody like Johann Sebastian Bach, it could be good to see a little bit less Picasso in it and a little bit more Alexander von Humboldt, for example. All right.